Welcome to level 5. In this level, we're going to have a look at some of the other visualizations that we have not previously looked at. So in level 2, we had a look at the table visualization, level 3, the matrix, and the bar and the line charts. Level 4, we've had a look at adding more control, more user interaction into your visualizations. So now we're going to continue to expand our repertoire of visualizations. So first of all, we're going to create a line visualization, and it's one that we've created in the past. We're going to put the date, and we're going to put the sales volume as the value, and we're going to separate this in terms of the different region names. And you saw that we had a problem last time. The problem is that what is fifth and what is second keeps changing. So here, for instance, we've got West Yorkshire being second. This is in 2006, but when we get to 2010, West Yorkshire is now third. And it's fairly easy to see with perhaps these 6, but not so easy when you've got more than these 6. To say what is happening, how the interactions, what the jockeying for position, who's first, who's second. Well, we can solve that dilemma by using a ribbon chart. Now I just want to look at the stacked area chart just to have another look. Here, now we can't even see which is first, second or third, but we can see the grand total. So both of these have got advantages and disadvantages. The ribbon chart takes some of the more interesting aspects from each. So let's have a look. So here you can see that we've got West Yorkshire starting off third, and then it comes up to second, and then goes down to third again. Similarly, you can see very clearly that South Yorkshire starts at fifth and then becomes fourth in 2001 before slipping back down. So the ribbon chart here allows you to see the volume, the total. So it's equivalent to the stacked that we had previously, but it doesn't display them in a fixed order like the stack charts do, with West Yorkshire always at the top, Greater Manchester always at the bottom. Instead, it puts at the top the one which is the biggest, and at the bottom the one which is the smallest. And you can see if we hover over these things, all of these values, that we have the rank as well. So here we can see the 2005 and 2006 rank is 4. Here we've gone from 5 to 4, up 1 place. And we can also see this sales volume change, which is also quite interesting to have, all at the tips of your fingers. I didn't need to do any additional programming to get that from the line chart. All I needed to do was change it to a ribbon chart. Now let's just have a look at the formatting for the ribbon, and you'll see that there is a special category here called ribbons. First of all, we've got the spacing. Are there any gaps between the various categories? So now you can see it being exploded a bit. In older versions, this number was a percentage of the y-axis. In newer versions, it is measured in pixels. Do the series colours need to match throughout? So red here is entirely South Yorkshire. Without that, we would have a lot of greys in between. So these are the actual ribbons where it can flow in between. I can't really see the use of that. So I always have this on. Transparency, well, fairly obvious. How transparent do you want the in-between bit, the ribbon, to be? So that gives you a bit of shading. And then a border. Do you want a border to be at the top and bottom of each of the strands, each of the ribbons, each of the lines? Now, you may also notice there's a lack of a y-axis here. I mean, part of this reason is because you can space it out, and therefore up here is not really meant to be the total of everything. It's not stacked in the sense of being able to give you a total answer. So this is when your data labels might come in use. Now you see they can't actually be shown at the moment. There's too much data on the screen. But if I just reduce the text size of the labels, here we can see 42K, 51K, and so forth. And we have the usual options here for the data labels. If you want to change the data colors, that's also available under the data colors. So ribbons, useful when you want to know the ranking of individual categories together with their size. But it can't, unless you've got them not exploded, you can't take for a fact that the totality of this is directly related to the totality of the, in this case, the sales volume. If they're not exploded, yes you can, but if they are exploded, then it's more of a picturesque view rather than being something that's, strictly speaking, 100% accurate. So it serves a different purpose to the line charts and the stacked area charts, but it does make for an interesting topic of conversation. Now we're looking at a lot of house sales, but have we actually totaled them up? So if I have a new page and I'll just click on sales volume, just add that to a new visualization, you can see that in total we have got 3.8 million homes sold. So how many homes did we sell by the end of 2004? Okay, I can put on a filter for that. So I'll drag date down into the visual level photo, or maybe I'll add a slicer. So I want is on or before, and I can type that in at the 12/31/2004. Apply filter. So you can see we've now got 1.976 million. But what about the end of 2005 and so forth? Can we have a running tally? So what I'm going to do is, instead of applying this as a filter, I'm going to put it into the axis. So here we can see an axis of all of the sales volume per individual year, but it's not cumulative. I want it to all add up. So I'm going to change it to a waterfall chart. Look what happens. So now each year's sales volumes gets added to the previous year. So you can see eventually this is how the 3.8 million has been calculated. And so you can see at each individual point, 2004, we're around the 2 million mark sold. Now, what if we put a region name to this? Well, we don't add it to the category or the y-axis, we add it to something called the breakdown. So if I add in the region name into the breakdown, you can see that in 1995, we have West Midlands, Greater Manchester, West Yorkshire, and each of those gets added into all of the years. So here we have a few negatives. So it goes up, but we have a few negative sales as well. It goes down. And when we get to 2004, 2005, we've got some really negative sales volume compared to the previous year, and then 2008 it drops off completely. Now I should point out this axis starts at 100k, so when we have a figure all the way down here, it's not actually down to 0. If I wanted to change that, I would go into the formatting, the x-axis, and so the y-axis, and I would change the minimum from auto to 0, which doesn't make it look quite as bad, but let's just change it back for now. Now, you'll notice there are some yellow colours as well as red and green. Green means these are your big advances. Red means these are your biggest decliners. Yellow? Well, what happens is I can say, okay, I may have 10, 20, 30 products here. I don't want to see all 10, 20, 30. I want to see a maximum of 5 is the default. So if I go into formatting of this visualization and go to breakdown, you'll see that it says how many breakdowns do I want. So if I want 2 breakdowns, then it's only going to show me the more significant 2, and then all the others are going to be wrapped up into other. So it still allows me to see what's the biggest bottom and the biggest top, for instance, but everything else is included in this other section. You'll also notice that as soon as I put in a breakdown, it's no longer cumulative. So the end figure is not the totality of 1995 to 2016, it's just the year 2016. So you have a choice. You can either have it all cumulative, or you can take each year as the final figure. And for, in other words, we look at 2003 down here at the bottom and see what has caused that to change the most. So what's caused it to change in 2003? We can see that Merseyside has gone up 2,000 units and West Midlands has gone down by 2,000 units. So if I take another example, let's have a look at a line chart of the average house price change. So we have a 12-month percentage change, and I'm going to show that by year. Now we've got a problem in that there isn't really a percentage change of 2060, so I'm going to change that from sum to average. There, I'll always make sure the answer looks realistic. And we've seen previously how we are able to change the modelling so that the default summarization is average, for instance. So you can see that we start off at around 4%, go all the way up to plus 28%, and then all the way down to minus 9. Now, if I was to put the waterfall, you can see roughly how that is all cumulative. It doesn't work exactly in terms of the actual maths because a 12-month percentage change is a exponential figure. So this doesn't really pay real weight to all of the drops that it should do, but it's an interesting graph. But much better is if I add in the breakdown. So if I add in the region name and then change the region breakdown to a maximum of 2, so we can see that in the between 2001 and 2002, the biggest risers, South Yorkshire and Tyne and Wear, but then between 2004 and 2005, while other things were going up, or at the very least recovering, we have got huge declines in Tyne and Wear and Merseyside. So it just allows a different view of your data. It allows you to see how it's been going over time in this particular case, but what the biggest contributors are, what really have been driving this. And equally, if you don't want a breakdown, then you can see it at a more of a cumulative level. So waterfall chart They're great if you've got positive and negative figures. For instance, you might be calculating your company's profit and seeing what the most profitable items were, and equally those which made the most loss. You can be auditing major changes, so for instance, that particular regions contributed heavily to changes. It could be looking at the change in totals. So for instance, suppose this was a head count, number of employees, then you can see how many new people minus leavers have arrived. Or you could put it into how much money you make and spend each month. So waterfall charts, they're fairly specialized, but I hope you can see they can be quite useful when you want to either look at a cumulative account or if you want to drill down into the significant figures. How does the sales volume vary according to price inflation? So if houses are rising quickly, do we have more sales volume? So people are trying to buy the houses before prices get too high? And if it's going down, do we have a reduction in the sales volume? Are people frightened and not wanting to buy? So here, instead of what we've done previously, we are comparing two numbers together. We're comparing sales volume and house price inflation. And for that, we use a scatter graph. So if I add a new page, add a scatter graph, which looks like these little circles, we can see that we've got lots of axes. So let's just think about the question again. I want sales volume against house price inflation. So sales volume, I will put that onto the x-axis. And house price inflation, I'm going to take the 12% change and put that on the y-axis. Doesn't really look much of a scatter graph. It's only got the one item. Well, what's happened is that it's given the sum of the sales volume against the average of the 12 monthly percentage change overall. Okay, I don't want it overall. I want it, let's say, per year. So I'm going to drag the year into the details. And now it's getting more like a scatter graph. We're really starting to get some additional dots. Okay, I'm going to add into that the region name. So we've got 22 years. We've got 6 regions, so we should have 132 dots by the time we're finished. So let's add in the region name. Doesn't look different. And that's because we're back to these drill levels. So you could expand the next level and you'll see all 132. But really, you want this to be the default view rather than it being drilled down and drilled up. Then you need some sort of unique identifier here. Something that combines date and region name. And we'll have a look at how this could be done in the modelling section later on. But for now, just know we can only choose one series unless we are going to be drilling down and expanding to the next level. So what I'm going to do instead is focus on the region name. Now, the region is all in the one colour. When I expand it to the next level, it's all in the one colour. So can we have it in lots of different colours? And we can if I drag region name to legend. So now they're all differently coloured. So you can see the difference in sales volume for the various regions. Okay, but what if I wanted to concentrate on 1 year at a time? Well, I can drag year down from details to the play axis. Oh, that's a new axis. We haven't seen that before. What does that do? Now let's drag the date into the play axis. This is going to give us all the dates. I want to change that to the year. So I'm going to click on the date hierarchy. And we've got at the bottom a little play button. If I click on it, you'll see that we have all of these dots for each year. And so we can see how they change over time. So we can see now that things are going down, -10, that the sales volume has really collapsed. Now we've started to have a little bit of confidence that the sales volume goes up. So this gives us a bit of flexibility in what we're going to do. So do we want all of the dates to be shown at once? Or do we want it to be shown more as a presentation? Now, we've got another property here, another thing we can fill in, which is the size. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill that with sales volume again. And you can see the bigger the sales volume, the bigger the size. So let's play this again. So the further right we go, the more these circles get bigger, but as soon as we get to the left-hand side, they really start reducing in size. So the idea about this is generally to have three independent variables, numeric. So we've got the sales volume, we've got the 12% change. So let's have a third value for the size. So let's have the average price as your size. So now we can see that the cumulative effect of all of the house price inflation, but when we get to around 2007, this is when the house prices were at their maximum, and then they slightly declined, but they're still fairly big, even though there is some negative inflation, and even though sales values are down, we still have much higher house prices in 1996, or much lower house prices in 1996 compared to the peak of the negative house price inflation around 2009. So as you can see, the circle's much bigger. So this allows us to compare three different values. Now it's all being grouped together on something called the scatter visualization, the scatter chart. But when we add this third value, it becomes technically a bubble chart. There is a third variant of this called the dot plot. And this doesn't actually use on the x-axis a number, it uses anything else, a category. So I could put the area code on the x-axis, for instance. You can see we can't use the play axis to do that. So get rid of the play axis. And now for each of these, we have got all of these individual plots. I think this is probably the most underused version of the scatter plot, largely because you can fairly well replace it with a column chart. But if you don't want the actual column, you just want the dot, then it can be used. But most of the time, it is used with two numeric values for the scatter and three numeric values for the bubble. So I'll just undo a few of these changes to get back to where we were. There we go. So let's have a look at some of the formatting that we can do with scatter plots. First of all, we can change the shape. So it needn't be actual round circles. It could be squares, it could be diamonds, or it could be triangles. And if you wanted one particular item to be something different, then you can have that as well. So useful if you wanted to highlight, say, Greater Manchester and make it a different shape. You can also change the shape, size as well, relative to whatever else variables you've got. You can add in the category labels if you so wish, so quite useful when everything's moving, so you can visually see which is Greater Manchester and which is Tyne and Wear, for instance. You can add borders, so adding slightly darker shades of the shape around it. That's it, and that's a shame really, because one thing I haven't been able to spot is how you can actually change the speed of this playback, because there isn't actually a play axis category. And that for me is a bit of a shame. However, scatter plots, or scatter graphs, or bubble plots, these are useful for being able to add multiple items, dots, squares, when comparing two numeric values, and a third numeric item if you want to add the size. And just to confirm, there is currently no way to actually change the play speed, but hopefully that will be something that Power BI will implement at some point. They do change Power BI every single month. New features come out, so hopefully we're getting better and better product each month. And finally, one other way of highlighting a particular series is by clicking on it, and you'll see that a trail happens, so you can see where it has been. And this is also quite useful when you play it. So if I start playing this, then you can see the trail disappears, and then it starts again. So you can see how it progresses over the years. So this is how you can create a scatter, a bubble, or a dot chart.